because of all of this, it might not be a bad idea to offer incentives or compensation because it is going to be a big headache on on the part of the tenants. They're going to be their lives are going to be disrupted. As I mentioned, they're going to have a lot of stress and anxiety. So I don't know. Some landlords do offer compensation and incentives. Let's take a quick look at what some landlords suggested you can do is maybe you can give them a little bit of a break on their rent for the next month or two or however long it takes to sell the property. Hadi mentioned this before is after you sell the property, tell them you're going to give them a rent rebate. I'm going to return a certain percentage or a certain amount of the rent. Perhaps you can give them a smaller amount or a smaller token of appreciation. Theirs, give them some gift certificates. Maybe after every showing, you could give them something. I don't know about this one because I think we all know that sometimes we have to go through tons of showings before we finally sell it. But if you don't, this might be one method you can use. Or again, for every month the property is on the market, you can give them a little gift certificate. And we know that there's just a ton of gift certificates, certificates you can give to different things, to movies, restaurants, Amazon. I think most people have an Amazon, Walmart, things like that. So whatever, or you hopefully a lot of us know what our tenants like, and maybe you can even tailor it to some of our tenants. And then other landlords said they sometimes will pay moving expenses for the inconvenience there. And the reason that some landlords do offer little gifts or incentives or compensation is, and this is an important point about this, is that the cooperation of the tenants is critical. It's crucial to have first of all, to have the sale go through and then to minimize the amount of stress for you and for the tenants. Remember, if you have good tenants and you treat them nice and you give them maybe little incentives, they're probably more likely to have the units looking really nice. They're going to allow you to come in and make all those little repairs and improvements. All people are going to be walking in and out, members of your team, your agent, your broker, things like that. And then you're going to have a bunch of showings. They're going to tend to be more cooperative and be available for all of these if you are nice to them. And then it also the incentives can have a little bit of or maybe even a big impact on how the tenants behave during the showings. The last thing you want is for a potential buyer to walk in, and because the tenant is angry at you and you haven't maybe sweetened the pot a little bit with these incentives, is it to talk bad about the property, to complain about it, to make up lies about it. And this is really important because tenants can either make or break a sale. So just kind of think about maybe offering a little bit of incentive, and it doesn't have to be something huge. Sometimes just dangling something in front of somebody or rewarding them for good behavior really makes a difference in how the sale goes. All right. So the first consideration, or the first thing you need to prep your tenants about, is to letting them know about their lease. So let's do another quick little poll question here. This is more like a pre-test question, just to see what you guys are familiar with. Here we go. So here is the poll, not really a poll question this time, but this is more like a quiz or a test question for everybody. Are landlords allowed to terminate a lease and either ask or force the tenants to move when they sell a rental property? Let's see what everybody says here. Because believe it or not, a lot of landlords make an error on this one, and it gets them into legal trouble. So we want to make sure that you guys don't get into this trouble and that you are following the laws. And we'll cover here the next slide what some of these laws are. All right. I think everybody is ended up. Okay. Yay. Everybody gets a gold star. So everybody is correct here. No, landlords cannot force, say, all right, your lease is up, or I'm going to force you to move. So congratulations, everybody. You got it right. Let me see. There's a little check question. Deborah says, what happens when the tenant refuses to let the client see the unit? Excellent question. Deborah, hold on to that one because we got a slide about that, and that will be a really good discussion question here. But let's really quickly review what the law says about the leases and what you need to tell your tenants. Because remember, we're letting our tenants know that we are listing a property for for sale, and we need to let them know what their rights are. So everybody got this right, but it is important for everybody to know that leases will continue for the current tenants until they come to an end. Doesn't matter if you're listing the property for sale. Now, if you do want to let your, have your units be empty before you list it for sale, and I mentioned we'll talk about the reasons why we may want to do this on a future presentation, but it could be, if you have a month-to-month lease, that's different. You can, with, proper notice, because remember, certain areas have different notification time limits, especially Chicago. You got the 30, 60, 120-day notification limits there, notices. But if you have a month-to-month lease, you can wait until that, end of that month, give them the notification, and then they do have to move. But if you've got the long-term tenants, you're gonna have to wait until that lease expires if you do want to sell. And of course, the new landlord who inherits these tenants, they're gonna have to have the lease to continue. And then Illinois law also recognizes oral leases. So if you have an oral lease with your tenant and not a written lease, that oral lease is going to be honored, and you also can't terminate the lease and force the tenants to move. I don't know how you're ever going to prove that, but hopefully everybody can. So it's just important for all of us to know, even though you guys, all got it right, we can't force the tenants to move out. You wouldn't believe how many landlords are not understanding of this. They're ignorant of this law, and they do absolutely tell the tenants, hey, you got to get out. And of course, that ends up being in a big legal mess and then problems there. And then when you guys go to buy the properties, or you can let your existing tenants know that the new landlord also can't kick them out, or they can't make them sign a new lease with the new renter terms. The current lease has to be completely written out until the expiration. Now, there are a couple little exceptions here. If you're going to move in, or maybe a family member is going to move in, but that's where I'll leave it up to everybody to look up what their local regulations are, but there might be a little bit of a loophole for that. So Virginia, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'll ask this for everybody who has sold rental properties with tenants in place. I'm just kind of curious there. Has any of your tenants ever asked you, that's it, let me out of the lease. I don't want to deal with, the whole hassle of the selling process, people coming to look, because it is an inconvenience, or they're scared about what the new landlord is going to look like and what the new situation is going to look like. So Virginia, have you ever had any tenants ask to get out of lease because of selling it? And then everybody on the call, if you can type out in the chat, have you ever had a tenant ask to terminate a lease because you listed a property for sale?
Actually, no, we have not, but we've had tenants where they will stop answering the phone calls. They won't let the agents in anymore.
Okay.
So what we've done in the past is we offer them a rental credit for every showing. And it's nothing crazy. We just do like $10, $20 a showing. And if they have, 3 showings in a week, that's $30. So that's one thing that we do. And
Excellent. So
yeah,
it's
that does help
kind
out a
of
lot.
excellent. Thank you
Mhm.
very much for mentioning that. So this is where I had the slide here is, remember, just like Virginia said, just grease the palms a little bit, and then it makes them to hopefully cooperate a little bit better there. Let me see, somebody typed it in the chat. Diane says she's never asked to terminate a lease. Usually they're just nervous about the new owner. Absolutely. And then Diane, I'm not, this happened to you in the past. You're sending the messages only to me, and everybody else can't see it. So you might want to change your settings there. Kind of strange that happens, but this is why I had mentioned or asked this question is, tenants are scared about the situation. So it sounds like maybe they're not super scared about being asked to move, or wanting to move. They're just more nervous about what the new situation is going to be like. And that just goes along with the caveat of, change is scary. It doesn't matter if it's this or anything in your life. Change is scary. The uncertain future is scary. So hopefully we'll be a little bit, understanding for this. Jeffrey. Hold on, Jeffrey has a long thing here. Oh, Jeffrey, you had a really good suggestion there, and I forgot to put it in my presentation here. So let me hold on to yours, and I might copy and we'll talk about it here for a second. That's a really good suggestion. Paul has a question for you, Virginia. If it's a multifamily building, do you offer the $10 per showing to all the tenants in the building in case they talk to each other, or do you only reward the ones who whine and complain?
When it's a multifamily, we normally either try to show a vacant unit or just try to show one unit. And then once we get an actual offer, then we'll do like a whole building showing. But
Excellent.
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that one I did include there in my slide presentation. So I'll remember to mention that one again. So let's say you don't have a vacant unit there in the building. Have you guys, or would you guys offer it to everybody? Because I hadn't thought about that for a multifamily. Man, that could really add up in costs there. Virginia, so would you guys offer it to everybody there in the building if you don't have a vacant unit? Or how would you handle that? Because it could get pretty expensive.
No, we would just do one showing. So we would just show one unit. And then
Aha.
after once we, like I said, once we have a contract in place, then they become mandatory showings, like for the property inspection and the village or city inspection. And
Aha.
we do not give credit for those.
Okay, thank you. That's a really, really good strategy. And thanks, Paul, for asking it because I think that's important for the multi family. And then Prince just says he only shows one or two apartments in the larger building, so they do the same thing that Fairview does. And then Suni says, I just sold one of my 6 unit properties, closed April 4th. It was a seamless process where the tenants are concerned. Just inform them at the appropriate time that the property is being sold. It's best to have one or two units identified for show and then to keep the confusion down. Thank you, Suni, for sharing that. That's a really good strategy. And as you, now that I'm reading it out loud, that just sort of triggered something in my mind. Like Virginia was saying, hopefully you have a vacant property and that will make it easy. But if you don't, then maybe you want to select your best tenants, the ones who are, have the nicest units and who are not going to raise a fit, whine, complain, and cause problems there. So these are really good things to keep in mind when you're getting ready to sell the properties. You want to have the cooperation of the tenants, offer them incentives, or maybe just show vacant properties, or like I said, just identify one or two units where the tenants are going to cooperate. But we'll get to the tenants who are not cooperative here in a little bit, like other people asked.